And so we come to the fourth and last talk on the Christian vision of life after death. And the title is God's Project for the World. And just to look over for a second our previous talk, in death, we were saying we meet God, who is the source of all life, and we become life itself. We took the scriptural accounts of the disciples' experiencing of the risen Lord, how they offer hints of how it may be when we die. We mentioned Mary, we mentioned the disciples, we mentioned the people going to Emmaus, and we mentioned Thomas, and how they hint at the help that will be given us to become at home in the world to come. We mentioned the great gathering, the wedding feast, how providence will be unveiled. And we will find ourselves exploring with God, the world of the galaxies, the furthest stars, as well as the micro world, which is so fascinating. And all will be good, enduring, life-giving relationships with everyone. Now we look at the big project of God for the world. I was reading a management book some time ago, and it says that unless you have a BHAG, you won't get very far in running a business. Now, to tell you, a BHAG is a big, hairy, audacious goal. You need that rather than dealing with the bits and pieces. You need to have a vision of what's ahead and what you want to do. And God has a BHAG for the world. God has a big, hairy, audacious goal. God became human so that human beings might become divine. That's from Thomas Aquinas. And it is repeated in the Eucharist, though you wouldn't notice it, where we say in the offertory, may we become sharers in the divinity of Christ, who humbled himself to become sharers in our humanity. The divine and the human are shared. We are to become like God, just as God became like us. That's the divine plan underpinning all of human history. So that's why some poets, such as Gerard Manley Hopkins, can say very simply, "Thee, God, I come from, to thee go." We are from God and we are going back to God, but in a transformed way, in a complete way. In the funeral liturgy of the third Eucharistic prayer, we say, we shall become like God because we shall see God as God is. We shall become like him because we shall see God as God is. You can spend a lifetime thinking about that, and always you'll be drawing more fruit from it. That's our great hope. That is our hope for those who've died, that they have come into the presence of God, that they see God always, and as often happens, we know, we become like those we love. We shall become like him because we love him. What can that mean, to become like God? It means that just as God is love, we are to grow in unrestricted love like God does. We can think of nature. It's easy to love nature. It's easy to grow in love with nature. We can love those who are good. It's easy enough to do that. And even in those who are bad, people like Thomas Aquinas would say that I can love the good that God has put in them, and I pray that God may be able to work in them to bring them to the fullness of good. So think of your favorite enemy and begin to wish that for him or her. We too are in solidarity with Christ. He's the prototype. He's the first instance of what it means to be fully human and divine. The last stage of evolution has taken place in Jesus. The new final stage is emerging in people who are both human and divine, and we are members of that group. This then is the deep down movement of history through all its ups and downs, its tragedies and its triumphs. I often think of it as a building site. We've got building sites all around us here in Dublin, too, where I am at the moment, new office blocks going up and digging going on down and down and down for car parks, etc. And the whole thing, the building site is a mess. It's all confusion. And you wonder what's being built. And you might wonder the same in the world. What's being built in its disasters? You know the story of the three men asked what they were doing, and one said, I'm chipping stones. The second said, I'm building a wall. The third said, I'm helping to construct a great cathedral. What God has in mind is the great cathedral and is working in and through everything and everyone to bring it about. And our final question is, will all come home at last, or will many people be lost? I don't know if that gets you out of bed in the morning, but I like to think that that's what gets God out of bed in the morning, working away at the salvation of all humankind. It's God's dream. You get it in the New Testament. Jesus says it himself, I will draw all people to myself. And he's referred to then as the one who takes away the sin of the world. He takes away the sin of the world. You get that every time you go to Eucharist. And again, it's one of those phrases that has endless meaning, and one can play with it and grow in appreciation of God, working at that this is God's great project, not alone to take away the sin of the world so that our sin is not held against us, but to take away the effects of sin, which are so obvious in the world. And that takes God all of time and into eternity. Pope Francis, in his most recent encyclical, Fratelli Tutti, says, either we are all saved or none of us are saved. The solidarity of humankind is being made evident through the coronavirus, for instance. It can travel anywhere, it can afflict anyone. We are in this together. And so God then works, as St. Paul says, to bring good out of evil. That is God's work. God does remedial work all the time with us. And so the descent into hell that's spoken of in the Creed gives an image of how far Jesus will go in trying to bring people home, people whom he loves limitlessly. In regard to hell, we, for 1,000 years and more, perhaps 2,000 years, we have continued to believe that the stories about hell in the Gospels, like the Great Judgment that Michelangelo painted in the Sistine Chapel, are to be taken literally. But you'll be glad to know that the Church recently, in the New Catholic Catechism, has said these things are not to be taken literally. They are to be understood as warnings to us in a very dramatic fashion, warnings to us to live lovingly. So in that scene that Michelangelo painted, the real issue is, I was hungry and did you give me to eat? I was thirsty and did you give me to drink? I was naked and did you clothe me, etc. And so they are attempts to shake our imaginations to realize the total, utter importance of living lovingly with our neighbor. And so we then, if we can believe this, are the people who live our lives out in the world, trying, as Pope Francis would say, to be good Samaritans to all, to give people our time and our attention, to give people what they need in order to recover themselves and to be restored to their communities. That is our task. To build the world of the resurrection is the task now. It's not simply something that occurs after everyone has died. The new world of the resurrection has already dawned, and we are to be carriers of it. And we've to believe that although we're faced with the impossible, nothing is impossible to God, and we put our hands in God's hands and believe that. And the Church commands us to hope for the salvation of all, as you get in Vatican II. So such then is the outline of the Christian vision for the world to come. And it gives us an unassailable hope in difficult times and situations. I worry about the planet, and so do you. I don't know how it will end. Will we end up with what's called the uninhabitable planet? Even if we do, the Christian vision of the world to come stands firm. And we walk a world in which the resurrection is occurring. We meet people who are destined for eternal life with us. There are no ordinary people in the world, but only those who are the sons and daughters of God. There's ultimate meaning given to everything, and the world we love will be brought into eternal life with us. And so we end our talks with this one, the God's project for the world and the Christian vision for the life of the world to come. So thanks to you for participating in this and for thinking along with me. As you can see, I don't know, and I don't have everything worked out, but I'm giving you what Christian belief is about, and let's try to live it out. And at the end, we will smile at one another happily and say, gosh, it was a lot more true than we thought, a lot more wonderful than we could have imagined. So thank you and goodbye.